How are you, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the podcast to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, I'm okay. Saturday morning, woke up in the middle of the night for a while, but that was less due to anxiety and more to the refried beans, nachos that Amy made for an evening snack. While I was up, I looked at my email and saw that one of my virtual pals sent me a note that she shared with her comp class at the university where she teaches about dealing with despair, studying pop culture, which is the nature of that class, and the possibility of change. And she cited the recent episode of this series where I quoted that line from Soderbergh's adaptation of Stanislaw Lem's Solaris, "There are no answers, only choices." And in the note, she referred to me as a friend of hers who makes a podcast, and even though we barely know each other, have never spoken, and for the life of me, I don't know how we initially connected. And I asked her, and she has no idea either. I thought friend is a good thing. I mean, I joke a lot on the show that I assume guests forget who I am the moment I leave the room, but so many of them have really become my friends over the years, and those relationships are something I really treasure because I don't naturally go out and do that and make friends, and so the show has really opened my world in a lot of respects. A case in point is today's guest, cartoonist Kriota Willberg. Kriota's husband, Bob Sikoriak, was the first cartoonist I ever recorded with back in 2012. I mentioned that during our conversation today. And during that session, I got to meet Kriota. And in addition to being two of the nicest people in comics, Bob and Kriota have been better friends to me than I deserve over the last, almost 8 years. It's always a joy to see them at festivals and when we can get together in New York and just shoot the breeze about life in and out of comics. Doesn't have to be, comic-specific conversation. It can just be people. Now, Kriota's a key figure in the field of graphic medicine, which encompasses more than comics about illness, but it does put her in a unique position as so many artists right now are trying to come to terms with the pandemic and how they can render it through their art, which, of course, this is my way of doing also. It's just not graphic. It's all verbal. But Kriota's history in dance and in massage therapy, plus her being just a few years older than me, gives her a great perspective on comparing this moment to the depths of the AIDS crisis back in the 1980s. This is all stuff we get into during the podcast itself. I just want to give you some of the framework of who Kriota is and why this is a fun conversation. Oh, also, Kriota has a book that came out about a year and a half ago called Draw Stronger that is incredibly useful for artists who find themselves with a lot more time on their hands now to draw and are thus putting their bodies at risk by not taking exercise breaks, not knowing how to draw stronger, how to make sure that their bodies hold up, and of course, their minds. Anyway, you're going to hear all this over the next 40 minutes. It is a slightly longer check-in episode than some of the previous ones, but sometimes when you talk to a friend, you just, you lose track of time, Now, as caveats go, it is not the disaster that yesterday's was where I had to re-record my entire shebang, but Kriota's mic was a little high, and my voice echoes a little on her channel over her headphones, and it makes her audio a little metallic, so there's some rustling noise in there I couldn't get rid of. Her cats chimed in at one point. Nothing that's too distracting. I just want you to know I feel bad about it because I'm insane. Also, when we were talking about AIDS near the end of the episode, Kriota is using air quotes when she's referencing some of the fears about communicability and public reaction and everything else. Problem is, it's verbal, so you guys can't see the air quotes. And after we wrapped, she was a little concerned that some of what she said might have sounded flip, as though it was her perspective and not that of a less informed general public. That was not her intention. Like I say, she's characterizing what the public's take was on who was being infected at the time, what the fear was like, etc. So just want to make sure you keep that in mind when we get to that part of the episode. For my part, I played it back. I didn't hear anything that I took as flip or otherwise offensive, but just putting it out there. Here's me and Kriota. So how are you dealing? How are things going?
I'm actually dealing pretty well. Before all of the shutdowns started, I was a massage therapist at Memorial Sloan Kettering for a long time. And then last spring, I got a book deal with Workman Publishing to write and draw a book about surgery. Mm-hmm. So I left Sloan and I've been working on the book ever since. So it's actually, I've been able to adjust to this very easily because although I would leave the apartment to go to the writer's room to do my work on the book, I can just as easily do that here. And I'm no longer involved in patient care. So that also takes an additional level of stress out of my daily life. So I'm doing well. I'm adjusting to working at home, but it's not so bad. And because I, specialize in graphic medicine in a way, I'm kind of every aspect of my life now has become a graphic medicine narrative. So it's a little surreal. Also, every diary comic that everybody is doing at this moment that is, expressing how they're coping with or how they're feeling about, the COVID-19 culture also falls within the realm of graphic medicine. So, no matter what I look at, I'm kind of living my, area of, I'm living my genre on so many levels.
And that sort of, this is the moment I was built for, that sort of.
It is, but it's also a little bit much.
Sure. Yeah. Is there a point of decompression for you? A point where you need to step back during the day? And how do you achieve that given, the parameters, what you're doing, and the sort of stuff you read?
Well, to be honest, working on the book is very satisfying to me, but I've also been feeling a lot of guilt for actually not being involved directly with patient care anymore. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the stepping back, the thing that is, the thing that I need to do to relax in a way is to find a way to help. Mm-hmm. And today I found that way. I've been looking for volunteer opportunities in New York City, and most places will not take volunteers over 50 years of age, and I'm 57. But I found a food pantry that just won't take anybody over 65.
So as long as this doesn't go on another 8 years.
Right. I'm okay.
And if it does, frankly, we have much greater worries than the food pantry.
Exactly. So, as a cartoonist, I'm getting better at getting my work done at home. Obviously, it's more distracting than going to my desk at the writer's room, because when you're there, your only focus is the work. And as I talk to you, I have a cat on my lap. And so there's, even if you're shut away from the rest of your living space, there's still a lot more distraction to deal with. But today I actually went to this food pantry and chopped garlic and helped set up, service and, assisted the cook. And I feel it was a lot of physical labor, but I feel so relaxed. It's just amazing. Yeah. So I came home and I was yay, I'm going to make comics now. And I was just so energized from having this other outlet. and a way to feel like I was directly contributing to the well-being of others. So now I'm very jazzed. I can't wait to go back next week and do it again.
I was going to ask how often are the shifts, basically?
Well, the way their website is set up, you can just kind of like volunteer. They have a schedule up and you can just like plug yourself in for, when they have an opening and when it's convenient to you, essentially. So I'm planning on going once a week, until this whole mess is over, and actually maybe beyond that, because the food situation in New York is like, it's pretty serious for some people.
Yeah. How is your area and the neighborhood, or do you, are you able to gauge that from the apartment?
It's hard for me to know. We live in a very large like apartment complex. We're very lucky because there's a lot of greenery and plants in the context of this complex. So I can look out my window and I can see treetops, and, it's like I can feel like I'm still kind of in touch with the natural world in the middle of New York City. And I'm very grateful for that. When I look out on the street, I don't see that many people wandering around. We have a neighbor who lives on the floor above us, and she is older. And every night at 7:00, everybody comes to their windows and cheers. So she and I actually have been like, kind of yelling back and forth across through our windows. So like, it turns out she needed a mask, because she had been to see her sister who was ill. She had a mask and then she forgot it. She left it with her sister. And I've been sewing masks for my spouse and I. And so I was like, hey, well, I can sew you a mask. So I was able to like do that for her. But, from my perspective, things seem pretty good. The situation is serious, but people are taking the shutdown seriously. People are wearing their masks on the street. They're like trying to give each other 6 feet of space, which frankly, in the middle of New York on skinny sidewalks is sometimes kind of difficult.
Sure.
But I'm really, I am so thrilled to be living here because strangers are so generous with each other. And, I'm thrilled with everybody here. Like everybody recognizes the situation is, important. Some people like me and others are like bored out of their minds on occasion, but
Sure.
It's like everybody is really willing to, play by the rules and like support each other when it's needed and as they can. So I'm very, very happy to like be in the middle of New York City at this time.
Cool. As far as the domestic dynamic goes, both with having your spouse also work on comics, but also having the cats, wondering what you're doing there all the time. How are you able to negotiate that over? I guess it's been about 6 weeks since we've gone into this mode.
Yeah. So, my spouse is Bob Sikoriak. And, we live in a rent stabilized 1-bedroom apartment in the middle of New York City. Like we're just the quintessential archetypal like artists. Our 1-bedroom is actually our studio, and we've taken bookshelves and like put them down the middle of the room. And then we each have 2 desks on either side of our bookshelf wall. And, so under normal circumstances, we're very good at working in the same room and not interrupting each other too much. Like if we need to have a conversation, usually the first thing out of either of our mouths is, can you talk? And then the other person says no or yes. And then if it's a yes, we have the conversation. If it's a no, you just don't say anything. It's like, okay, later. But I kept finding myself getting very distracted and wanting to, and saying, can you talk, when I should actually be focusing on my work. Because at the writer's room, you don't talk in the writer's room. You can talk in the kitchen, but you can't talk at your desk. And I was missing that kind of focus. So Bob actually rigged a door for me. He strung a string across the room and he put a sheet on it. So now when I close the sheet, that reminds me that I can't talk. Like, it's this physical representation that it's like, nope, like, now I'm enclosed. It's time to focus. I'm not going to talk. And so we've been doing very well. Bob is on deadline. When he's on deadline, he tends to work very late. So if he gets to bed before 5 a.m., he's having an early night.
Jeez.
I know. I could never do that. But what that means is, like, I get up at 7. So I have the morning and the afternoon essentially to myself. Although he has to, we sleep, our bed is in the living room because our office is the bedroom. So fortunately, Bob is a very sound sleeper. So I will do my cardio and I will do my strength training, like in the living room. And he'll sleep through it. So we have, and then, I go to bed around 11 or midnight. So we both have times where we have privacy, even though we're like literally in the same room. So it's actually working out pretty well. Plus we really get along. Like, we're besties. So it totally works out.
It always looked like that from the outside. I'm so glad to hear you actually say that.
Yeah.
You always seem like the two of you are in sync about a lot of stuff. So, although the arrangement, the timing reminds me of when I recorded with MK Brown. I think she said she and Kleben, when they were married, basically they lived in shifts. It was literally like he would be drawing or painting or whatever from like 10 to 6 a.m. and she would start like 8 a.m. and get rolling. So they only had a small window in which they were actually together because working in a one bedroom again had to be done in shifts like that.
Right.
Yeah. But you make good art.
Yeah.
So, now about the strength and the cardio training, you're the author of Draw Stronger.
Right.
Are you, do you have to remind yourself during these work days, given the constrained, apartment living right now, to take breaks and do your exercises?
Actually, yes and no. Do you know Ellen Forney's book, Rock Steady? Yeah. So it's this really awesome book about like tips for dealing with bipolar disorders and other types of mental health issues. I read it and interviewed her for an article because I write this column called Get a Grip on the Comics Beat. And when I read Rock Steady, I don't have a bipolar disorder, but I do have chronic migraine. And there were some things in her book that were like extremely valuable for me to use. And one of her recommendations is that you get a routine and you stick to the routine, because the routine, she likens it to like, oh, there goes the cat. I don't know if you can.
That's okay. My greyhound was upstairs squeaking his toy until 1 minute before you checked in. He was up there, squeak, 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 bark, bark, squeak. I'm like, really? It's just going to be that sort of evening?
Yeah, and now the cats are singing. So so Ellen talks about the importance of establishing a routine, and she talks about it like a piece of music. Like, you have like a bass beat that's like very steady and predictable, and it creates like a dynamic and a rhythm. And then that steady bass beat gives you the freedom to like create embellished melodies on top of that. So your routine is the bass beat. And then for me, it's like my artistic life or other variations are on top. So, being confined to a 1-bedroom apartment with a partner and 2 cats makes my routine even more important to me. So exercise is something I do 5 days a week. It's like, I get up, I have breakfast, I meditate, I exercise, then I go to work. And having that like, kind of drive and purpose has really, really helped me like cope with, the cabin fever that's like kind of endemic. We have a pandemic. Actually, we probably have a pandemic of cabin fever too now, but hopefully it's not as communicable. So it actually hasn't been that, like, adhering to that routine. Like, I would just like give Ellen a big fat kiss right now with tongue if she was in this room, because like that advice has really, really been it's been a rock for me, right? It's been a way to like make sure that I can assign my work time, stay productive, even with the distractions. It's like, it's been a real boon. So yeah, I'm not having a problem. Plus the exercise makes me feel so much better, that I'm not having a problem sticking to it. Taking a break is like, when I'm working, taking a break is getting harder. And oh yeah, if you draw with a cat on your lap, your posture is going to suck. There is no way to sit upright on the edge of a chair with a cat on your lap.
Yeah, you start molding into their body shape the same way they're molding into yours.
Exactly.
It's got a bad feedback loop.
Yeah.
Now, are you able to, beyond the work, especially early on in this, were you able to focus on reading and even creating in those first couple of weeks when this the social distancing period began? Was there I would say decompression? Was there a time it took to get into this sort of rhythm?
Yeah, it definitely took me. It took me a while to be able to readjust myself and not be so distracted. Also, because I'm working on a book about surgery, I have a couple of surgeons that I've been consulting with. And guess what? They're busy.
Yeah. Funny that.
Yeah, I know. Just, so it took me a little while to kind of reestablish a routine, right? And also like come up with a new plan for myself, like in terms of my progress on this book and how I was going to work it out. Also just the uncertainty of the time and, the realization, the act of literally having to stay in the house, like all of these things, like certainly were distracting. And, even though I would schedule myself to like sit in front of my desk for 8 hours, like at first, if I could get 5 hours of work out of an 8-hour like period, I was doing fantastically well. It's just, I could not focus and bring myself in there. But after about 2 weeks, things started to get a little bit better for me.
But you'd say having the book, having the book in front of you at least gave you a goal or a target of some kind.
Yes. Yeah. I'm very lucky in that my work, it's like my work is right now to make comics. That's how I'm making income. I have some illustration clients that I'm also working for. I lost a lot of income this spring because I had a ton of workshops canceled and other types of things that were supposed to be live events. Yeah. But I'm still able to salvage some of my finances because I've got these other jobs in place. So I'm considering everything that is happening. I feel like I am so very lucky right now. People are, my family in Ohio and like other people have really expressed their concern because, we're here in New York City. But for me, it's like, I am one of the luckiest people in this town as far as I'm concerned. So, I'm very grateful.
Good. Have you been in touch with people you hadn't been in touch with for years as part of this? Just either checking in or being checked in on by old friends?
Yeah, Bob has a number of his friends who he went to school with have started like doing some regular Zoom sessions. I also belong to like a very loose social group of cartoonists who have also started regularly Zooming. So people who I might see like, I don't know, a couple times a year, suddenly I'm seeing much more frequently. And, Bob and I also, like, we like to host movie nights. Like, we would have friends come over on a semi-regular basis to, like, all sit around and watch movies. So now we are, like, doing the Netflix, like, shared movie thing.
Oh, yeah, they do that syncing thing.
That syncing thing.
Yeah. What sort of movies have you guys been doing?
What did we watch?
Kids.
Kids. Oh yeah, so we watched Tootsie because it was.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to watch the Andromeda Strain. We actually now have the Andromeda Strain in our possession, so we have to figure out a way to all watch it. But, because graphic medicine and medicine generally is like my area, when I'm watching movies that are like serious, like medical dramas, it's just like, oh God. It's like,
I was going to ask, do you want to dive into that sort of thing, or would you rather, escape?
The Andromeda Strain is really great. Have you ever seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
It's, early 1970s. It's science fiction. It's kind of, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but, it's like a little nutty and gratuitous, and it doesn't really have much to do with reality, so it's awesome. But I remember when I was working in oncology at Sloan, I remember saying to a friend of mine, we were talking about like movies and books and what we would like to read. And, as a cartoonist, I spend a lot of time like exploring bioethical issues, exploring like really intense subjects, dying, health, research ethics, all sorts of really like heavy issues. And then when I was at work, I would be, literally massaging patients with cancer, some of who were also dying, facing other types of issues. So when I would go home, the last thing I would want to see would be anything that was going to like make me think or challenge me. It's like, no challenge.
Yeah, you earned it.
Yeah, like I'm busy challenging myself all day. So, it's like, I just want escape. Mm-hmm. It's like, like give me an explosion or like, a murdered body in the drawing room and Professor Plum or whatever. Like, just give me something fantastic and wacky. I love science fiction. I love totally unrealistic things because it really gives me a way to kind of move out of a lot of the issues that I'm contemplating on an almost daily basis. So I'm like, Andromeda Strain, great. Tootsie, great. Like,
yeah, I will tell you, it's one of my great bizarre escape movies to drop in every so often. Soap Dish.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Yeah, early 90s. Just one of the, you will just get swept up for an hour and a half and forget all reality really, really well. Do you feel like the medical experience you've had professionally has helped as you're going through this, as you're understanding the situation we're all in?
Absolutely. As also, as a massage therapist, literally touching all of my patients. You have to observe like hand hygiene precautions. I actually, at one point, I was thinking about doing like a comic strip about how many times I would wash my hands in a 5-hour shift.
Yeah.
Because when I was working in this chemo suite, if I saw 8 patients in a 5-hour period, it meant I was washing my hands probably around 16 times. And that doesn't include when I would put sanitizer on my hands.
Yeah.
So, and so, like, even though I'm no longer working in medical settings, like, hand hygiene has always been kind of, at this point, it's kind of second nature. It's like, yeah, again, I'm washing my hands 16 times a day, but I wasn't 4 months ago, but I was still, it's like, I'm very, it's very easy for me to get aware and cognizant of that kind of thing again.
Sure.
So yes, it's definitely helped me, like, negotiate how to be outside, and then how to come back in, and then what precautions I need to take, and, all of this other kind of stuff. Yeah. And, I'm very pro soap and water, and then hand sanitizer kind of only is necessary. Like, I don't like sanitizer replacing soap and water, because soap and water actually mechanically remove the pathogens from your hands.
Right.
And the sanitizer will kill them, but then you have a bunch of dead bacteria and viruses and whatever on your hands. And that always kind of skews me out.
Yeah, no, the sanitizer is just when we're outdoors, when we're not,
Yeah, when you don't
home,
have
basically.
a sink and, some soap immediately available, you should be using it all the time. But I'm like a very, there were all these runs on sanitizer, and I was like, I'm fine. Like, we have a bottle of rubbing alcohol, that will be our sanitizer. And then we have soap and water, so we're set.
I think I've got one little hand sanitizer I picked up in Newark Penn Station, February 28th, the last time I went down to DC. And that's I'm still barely halfway through that, because I'm home all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
So, I'm lucky. Although today, I had to pick up 6 months of contact lenses. I called the optometrist yesterday, and they said, well, we could ship them to you, but we have them at the office, so I could put them outside tomorrow, give you a call, and you could pick them up. I said, please do that, because I'd like any goddamned excuse to get in the car and go somewhere and just run to the doorway, pick that up, and get back in the car and go home.
Right.
Just to have a reason to go anywhere.
You have a car, it's so,
I know.
We don't have a car. We don't need cars here. But, I've also been, it's like avoiding the subway. So when I was looking for like a food pantry that I could volunteer at, it was like, okay, where can I, first of all, who will take me? Who am I not too old for?
Right.
And then how can I walk there?
Mm-hmm.
So I found one that is only a half an hour walk from our apartment. So, that works fine. It's actually in a neighborhood that I used to live in like 20 odd years ago. I used to live across the street from this place. So that's when the neighborhood was not quite as nice as it is now.
Yeah,
so I, sometimes I daydream about what it would be like to have a car where you could actually get in your car and literally just go for a drive.
Yeah.
And like see things.
It's weird. And we've generally stayed in because I don't see, I'll go out for a run early in the morning before people get out. But otherwise, Amy and I will take Bendico, our dog, for a walk down to the local shopping strip and back. It's about 1.5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do the gratuitous driving. Although Summer Pierre and I talked about how we both kind of want to just drive into Manhattan, just to see what it's like right now, and not to get out, not to see anybody or do anything, but just to zoom around New York with nobody on the road.
Yeah.
And nobody.
Well, traffic is light. You could do a lot of zooming, and the thing is, when I'm walking around the city for various reasons, it's like half the time. Okay, actually, 70% of the time, I don't have to stop for the traffic light.
Yeah.
Because there's no one there. Or there's like one car waiting And so it's like when the light changes, oh no, I have to let one car by before I can jaywalk.
Yeah. And you wonder about his moral thing where it's like, I'm in a city that's empty. Do I respect the traffic light or do I just go? Like, everybody has to rethink.
Yeah. No, people
our whole social contract.
I have not yet seen anyone just run a light. So
yeah,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
Now, one place you're dying to go once we're past this, or is it that you just want to have people over and be able to host?
No, last year, Bob and I only went to we only tabled at one comics festival. We tabled at SPX and that was it, because the year before we had both kind of been on a book tour and we were exhausted.
Yeah.
And so this was going to be the year where we got back out and did a lot of comics festivals and tabled and did all this stuff. And it's nope.
Yeah.
Poof, you're done.
Best laid plans.
And, I love Comics Fest because I really love, seeing people I only see in certain cities every year. And I love meeting new artists and I love going to panels and I love them for the community. So, I'm just kind of it's
just want to have an SPX or a Mocha or a TCAP.
Yeah, it's how we go back into this, is going to be
fraught.
It's going to be fraught for a lot of people. It's going to be a very interesting exercise. The thing about COVID is we need to take it very seriously because, people are dying and that's why we're all staying home. But you can look at the percentages when you're thinking about your own health. It doesn't have the death rate that Ebola does. It doesn't have, it's a serious illness, but I feel like this is also a really good rehearsal for when the stakes get higher. Mm-hmm. And I am really interested to see how comics community shifts and how it assembles and organizes, because I'm really adamant kind of about pursuing contact with people. I love comics festivals because I love that randomness. You can meet people, I have some very tight relationships with people I just met because I wandered up to their table.
Yeah. Hey, that's me and Bob. And therefore you. I was sitting, hiding from Mount Rushmore of comics at SPX, and he just sat down right next to me and said, "Hi, I'm Bob. What's your name?" And that's where our conversation began in 2011, 2012.
Yeah. And so I'm really interested in how we get back into these relationships safely. Mm-hmm. Because again, I'm anticipating that, of course, there will be another one of these down the pipeline. And if it's a more virulent illness, then having this kind of rehearsal and knowing how to adapt and adjust quickly is going to save even more lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen. Yeah. Go on.
So I'm eager to get back into things, and I'm not as fearful as I would be if it was a more virulent strain. It's not that I'm going to go hug everybody and lick their face or anything like that. But I'm just saying that my own anxiety will not be quite as acute as it might be, if mortality was higher. It's like I will be very adherent, but I'm also going to be a little less anxious about getting into things as like I observe. And if I make mistakes, I'm not going to panic. I'm just going to fix them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not like 28 days later where
exactly
one drop of blood and you become a Z.
Exactly. This isn't the zombie apocalypse yet. But, if it comes down to that, then we'll all be like well rehearsed for it. So we'll know how not to become the undead, and it'll be good.
Cartoonists will band together with X-Acto knives and T-squares.
Yeah, exactly. But, one thing that has really affected me here is So I was a dancer in the 80s and in Chicago, and I was studying massage and then got licensed in massage in the mid 80s, like 85 through 87. And that's when HIV and AIDS started to sweep through the country. And in the 80s, you couldn't just Google an illness and find out what the latest research was, right? And I was in this very terrifying and compelling situation where many of my friends died. And I was massaging some of them like literally days before their death, in a time where people were like, oh, you can't touch them, you're going to get AIDS, blah, blah, blah. It's like, It was a very fraught time. Also, the crowd I ran with was very fluid in their sexual preferences. So women were dying, men were dying. It was like, oh, this is a gay disease and I don't need to worry about this kind of thing. So it was a very fraught and terrifying time, but I also wanted to be able to comfort my friends by massaging them, even as they were very ill. So, I would take appropriate precautions, but, it's like I was in my early 20s. So I was also, subject to rumor. Like I would be, even though I knew I was doing everything right, I would be like terrified and freaking out, even though, my friends who were very ill were like asking me to massage them, and I would do it because it was very important to me that I did. But I have to say, it's like if I know I'm having a bad day when I wake up thinking about my friends who died. Yeah. And I'm having a lot of memories come up, kind of like experiencing similar aspects and different outlets. Like some things are very the same and some things are very different. And, because I had this very formative experience in my early 20s, it is like, it comes back to me in waves as like I continue on with living in the city. And that has been really, really hard in some ways. And that's probably been the thing that's like, weighed on me the most, like my memories, like having flashbacks of these other experiences, and has probably also interrupted my work as an artist in a way. Because I like to envision like the kind of comics like I would make as diary comics, but I don't like making diary comments. So like, I'll go through my day and like be thinking about like how I would frame this story, how, like what the layout would be, like, you know, how I would draw this, what I would do, but then I never make that work. Mm-hmm. But when that work is like coming into my head, then I have a harder time trying to visualize how I'm going to like draw this appendectomy in a way that's going to be friendly.
Yeah.
And not, you know, not make people throw down this book in horror and disgust. So, right. Yeah. So, you know, my past history and these other experiences are, they're kind of in this weird way, they're fighting for creative time in my head.
Maybe you need to get a diary comic, you know, out of your system.
You know, the thing is, I don't know.
I'm just saying, you know, or at least maybe just write one as opposed to drawing it.
Yeah,
at least,
I'm not sure. It's, you know, the thing is, I have so many ideas. Like, yeah. I am just like this constant, like, idea machine. It's like, it drives me a little crazy, actually. So I've gotten very comfortable with, like, you know, thinking out scenarios and then, like, releasing them into the ether. But because I'm experiencing another pandemic, like, these things kind of keep invading my creative space, and it's harder to, like, I'll release them, but then they'll come scurrying back.
I'm calling for an exorcism.
I
think you need to do a little, just a, you know, 8-page whatever, just you know, get it done, get it out, and you know, you don't have to show anybody. Just
get it out.
Make something out of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're talking to the guy who's managed to stay uncreative for 49 years.
Oh,
so,
I think you do fine. Creative-wise.
Yeah, my creation is conversation and goofiness, but, you know, and, you know, taking funny pictures of my dog.
Right, so. And that's all very important.
I think so.
Yeah.
It, you know, keeps him entertained, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kriota, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
I'm going to get Bob in a couple of weeks once he's past this deadline also.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll get his take on the curtain and domestic dynamic or two. I'm sure it'll be in sync with yours.
Yeah, well, he's on the other side of the curtain, so he can hear all of this. So he knows He knows where to take it.
Right. And I hope to see you at a festival or drop by the apartment, or so. I just hope we're in a world at some point in the next year where that can happen.
Yes. So, I so look forward to just bumping elbows with you.
Yeah, so no face licking.
No face licking, no hugging.
Roman handshake.
We'll just do the elbow bump. It'll all be good.
Sounds good, Kriota. So, talk to you soon.
Thanks.
And that was Kriota Willberg. Her book, Draw Stronger, Self-Care for Cartoonists and Other Visual Artists, is an indispensable resource for artists and their physical, maybe mental well-being. I don't know about the mental part, but it's great for the physical part. Draw Stronger is published by Uncivilized Books, and you can order it from your favorite bookstore. Kriota's site, with links to her work and her classes and the other things she's involved in, like the book Silver Wire, that's kriotawelt.blogspot.com, which is spelled KRIOTAWELT.blogspot.com. She's on Twitter as Kriota, Kriota, and on Instagram as Kriota Willberg. KRIOTAWILLBERG. This is all going to be in the episode and show notes, so I don't know why I spell it out for you guys. And we'll be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in. If you want to send me a little update to read on the air or have something you want to share with listeners, let me know and we'll set something up. I'm at groth18, that's GROTH18 @gmail.com. You can find contact info at our websites, vmspod.com and chimeraobscura.com/VM. While you're there, you can find a link to the COVID-19 sessions, which has all of these daily episodes. And you can also find all the 370 past episodes, full episodes of the show, along with these dailies. And in case you're interested in how I'm doing the remote recording instead of the in-person stuff I usually do, it is Zencastr.com that allows me to record like this. It is spelled Zencastr, so no final E. Zencastr is $20 a month, but my Patreon supporters are more than covering it, especially since I don't spend any money anymore on parking, tolls, subway trips, coffee, etc., to record those in-person episodes, usually in New York. So if you can spare anything, go find the Patreons, GoFundMes, Indiegogos, Kickstarters, tip jars, whatever, for the artists and writers you like. Show them some support, give to charities, give to food banks, do what you can for people who are in need right now. I am Gil Roth. It is April 25th, 2020, and this was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.